If you have any doubt at any point, you can ask at the time, no issues. Okay, you can raise the hand. I'll like elaborate all the things again and again. No issues in that. But the concept should be in your mind. The concept should be clear to you because you are the person who is going to implement the firewall in future. So we'll move easily. We'll move in a slow way so that you can easily understand what feature is there in the Palo Alto firewall and what is the use of that feature and how to implement that feature. Okay, we'll talk one by one, bit by bit, of all the feature set of the Palo Alto firewall from very scratch. Each topic will begin from the very scratch to the extreme level. Okay. Yesterday we configured basic things, right? Let's rewind all the things again. Let me change something. 100. So guys, I'm just changing the scenario. Okay. So what I'm going to change here, as of now, this virtual machine is acting as the management PC, right? And it is connected with the management port. And this interface is by default static with the IP of 192.168 series. I'm going to change that static behavior of that interface. I'm going to put it in the DSCP mode so that it can take the dynamic IP from my NIC card and I can directly take the access of that interface. Okay, that will be easy for you to show all the settings. This is the way. Sorry, not static. It's DSCP. DSCP client. Accept DSCP client domain. This machine is isolated now. I need to restart this machine. So interface management to see the IP address on the management interface. Version of it is showing nothing, unknown. I need to reboot the app. Palo Alto is in the booting phase. If you reboot the Palo Alto firewall in a practical scenario or in the production environment, it is going to take 5 to 10 minutes to boot up properly. Okay, because it will show you that the device is booted up, but in the backend there are multiple services are running, so it will take around 5 to 10 minutes to boot up the Palo Alto firewall completely. You have to wait for 5 to 10 minutes at least. I'll show you. If I use the correct username and password, it is still not going to allow me log in incorrect. It is showing that I can log in, but I'm using the correct username and password. Still, it is not allowing me login incorrect. Now it allowed me the same password. Show interface management again to see the IP. Now I received the IP as 192.168.31.147. 192.168.31.147. 47. You're not allowed the HTTP. One 47. 147. 147, yeah, right. Still not access. Oh, I say 31.47. The IP is correct. Computer system. Not sure why it's not working. Maybe due to that virtual lab environment. That's why. Let me put it back to the same state. Set device config system type static system IP address 192.168.1.1 netmask 255.255.255.0 type static. Yeah, all right. window. So interface management. Like this one. Into 168 and dot 100. Okay. Okay. 192, 168, 1.1. So, let me reboot the devices again. Ping 192, 168, 1.100. Ping its own IP. We have to wait until unless the firewall boots up properly. Otherwise, we are not going to take the access. The firewall is not going to allow to take the access. No, that thing is not happening. Maybe it is showing some malfunctioning. We change the port from static to DHCP. The firewall is up, but still I'm not able to ping that firewall. Let me reboot this again. Let's remove that portable drive. Let's see the results. Now we can access the firewall IP config. Perfect. 92.168.1.100 .1. Yes, /192.168.1.1. Why that thing is not open? Oh, goodness. Shit. Not sure why it's not working. Let me start a new lab. This one, new lab. Hold on. Same scenario, same lab, but on different part. Just the IP. Okay, 168. Now that should work. Otherwise, maybe that VM is not working. If that is not working at the time, that VM, we can declare that the VM is not working. Now we do 161 dot 100 dot 1. Yeah, that's pinging. Okay. It will show you like some information. Then after we can load it. Let's see. admin, all right, that one. Okay. Admin, admin. And now it's showing some information. Let's see if we can access. Yep, I got the access. After around 15 minutes, we got the access of this lab. Oh, big time. So if you are running, like if you are testing and if you are using the virtual lab, you will hit with this count or you will encounter with this kind of issues at the time, like your VM is not working, you are not able to ping the interface, right? But in the production, that kind of issue is not going to be happen. If you are working on a real device or if you are working on a real server, at the time this kind of issues is not going to be happen. So we talked about this dashboard, right? Any query about the dashboard? Anything? There are only three options we have to use. The column, we can make it as 2 column or 3 column. We can use the widgets to add more tabs here, or the refresh timer. By default, it's 5 minutes. We can use it 1, 3, 5 or manual, right? Any query, any questions about the dashboard? Anyone? Guys, am I audible?
Yes, sir. No, sir.
Okay, perfect. So in the device, we talked about how we can change the password for admin, right? Here in the lower left side is showing admin. Once you click on this, you can change the password directly for this user. But there is another option in the device administrator. Only the admin account is there. Click on this admin. Just click on this old password, new password, and change the password. Okay, simple, right? Then we move to the setup. Here we change this management interface setting. There is a setting button right to that management interface setting. Click on this, simple. So by default, the IP is on static. This is the default IP, default mask, and by default, only 3 services are enabled. We can enable more services like HTTP, Telnet, and other services also. This is for the management interface. You can see here, management interface setting. Okay, so this is not going to impact the data interface. This is just for the management interface. And there is option permit IP address. If you want to allow like some certain IP addresses from your LAN side, from the management side, those people who can access the Palo Alto Firewall, you can make a list of the IP here. You can add a single IP address or you can add multiple IP addresses. Only those people who is having that IP list in their system can access the Palo Alto Firewall. Okay, that IP list, maybe that IP list may be the part of this management segment or maybe a different segment. But if you are using a different segment, for example, if you are using the same segment 192.168.1.x series, so at that time, obviously you can get the access directly. But if you are using a different subnet, for example 10.0.0 something, and you map the IP 10.0.0 here, so at that time that 10.0.0 should be reachable to this IP address. So that's this management IP address. Otherwise, he's not going to take the access of the Palo Alto, right? Obviously, reachability should be there. No? Otherwise, the person who is trying to access the firewall cannot access. Your firewall is placed here on this management interface. This interface is having IP of 192.168.1.1. One of the user is connected on the LAN side with the IP of 10.0.0.1, for example. If that IP, that user is not able to reach to this interface directly, not from this way, not from this way, we are not talking about this way, from directly from this user to this management IP, until unless he cannot get the access. So if you are using this permit IP list, make sure the IPs you are mapping here should have the reachability to this IP address. Good so far?
Yes, sir.
Let's move further. Here is the general setting, same in the device tab, setup, management. General setting. What is there inside? Just click on the setting. Here you can change the name of the Palo Alto. As of now, it is Palo Alto VM. You can see here, there is a commit button, right? But it is not enabled. Once I make a change, let me change the host name as test. I'm just changing the host name. Okay. Click OK. Now that commit button is enabled. So let's talk about this basic fundamental of Palo Alto. So first thing, here, if you want to like save configuration, to save configuration, there is no concept for write, do write, or copy running or to start up. Okay. So we have to use the command commit in both, whether we are using the CLI or whether we are using the GUI. Clear? We have to use commit. Commit command in the CLI and commit button in the UI. Right? Is the commit button. We have to enable this. Clear? To save the configuration, we have to use commit. But before that commit, why that was disabled earlier, now that is enabled. So for that, we have to take the reference from the Cisco's router. So if we talk about the Cisco's router, right, and you configured something, like you configured one of the interface of the Cisco router, you just assign the IP address on that interface. So suddenly that IP will be the part of the production, right? You don't need to do write at that time. Are you getting my point? If you change something on the Cisco routers, just for example, just the IP address you configured on the interface of the router. Now, if the user is connected to that interface and having the same subnet IP, that user can reach to that interface, correct? He can ping that interface. Have you done this kind of lab? Like you change the IP address of the router and try to access that router from the PC without saving, without putting do write command or copy running to startup configuration. How actually they work? If we change something on the router, that change will be the part of production directly without your saving, without you save that with that configuration. So that is the part of running configuration. That is the part of running configuration. Cisco router. If you change something, that will be the part of running configuration, right? As of now, you change something and that becomes the part of running configuration. And that is the part of production also. Means you can ping, you can take access through that interface if SSH or Telnet is enabled on that interface. Even if you configure the routing or netting, you can take the internet access also. That is the part of running configuration. But because running configuration is not the permanent configuration, so we need to move that running configuration to the startup configuration. Difference is clear to you? What is running configuration and what is the startup configuration in the router? You change something, then you have to save that configuration, right? If you done the configuration on a router, then you have to save that configuration using the command copy running configuration to startup configuration, or maybe do write command simple. So what that command actually done in the backend, they put that running configuration to the startup configuration, because run configuration is not the permanent configuration. If you've done something and you have the running configuration, or at that time your router reboots, at that time your running configuration will be flushed out. That's why it is recommended, if you change something on the router, then you have to save the configuration. Understood?
Yes, sir.
But here, if you talk about Palo Alto, if you talk about Palo Alto Firewall, there is no concept for running and startup configuration. There is concept for candidate config. Okay. What is the mean? Candidate config. If we change something on the Palo Alto firewall, again, same example. Let's suppose it's a firewall. You change something on the interface. Now, that configuration is not going to impact your production. That configuration is not going to impact your production. What it means, like if you change something on the interface, and again, one of the user is connected with the same subnet, and you enabled all the things like ping, SSH, and HTTPS on that interface, still that user cannot access this interface until unless you commit the configuration. Means that configuration will be the part of candidate configuration. Candidate configuration is just a separate configuration which is not going to impact the production. Once you change something, that will be the candidate configuration. Now you have two different options, whether you can just save that configuration or commit that configuration. Save the configuration, or the second one is commit the configuration. Is it clear? Like if you change something on the firewall, it will be the part of candidate config, candidate configuration. Candidate configuration is not going to impact your production. You can change multiple things on the firewall, even all the things on the firewall. But that configuration is not going to impact your production. Your production will run as it is. After changing something, you have two different options, whether you can save the configuration. Save means it is going to create a copy of that candidate config in a separate file. The name is showing save configuration means we change something, and now that complete configuration is going to be saved in a in a separate file. Or the second option is you can put that candidate configuration in the non-volatile memory. Means you are just putting that configuration in the startup configuration, such as your router. Understood? Any doubt? I'll show you the exact difference, like by the words. I'm not sure, like whether you can relate this, but I'll show you all this thing. But the concept should be clear. Like there are three types of things. Firstly, if you change something, that will be the part of candidate configuration. Then you have two different options, whether you can save that configuration or commit that configuration. Okay. I'll show you that. Earlier, that commit button was not enabled, right? We changed something. We changed the host name of the Palo Alto as Palo Alto VM test. Now that commit button is enabled. So if you talk about a router, in the router, if you change the host name router one something, okay, and you check that host name is suddenly reflect on your CLI, right? Am I correct? Let's take a router here. I think that will be good. 3725, perfect. It's a router, normal iOS, right? Suppose router. So I'll show you the difference here. As of now, the host name is router of this device. Config T, sorry, enable config T. If I change the host name as not router, as Delhi, RTR, suddenly that name is reflected here. Can you see this? Earlier that name was router, right? I changed the host name as Delhi router. So suddenly the name changed here. Means now we change something and that thing will be the part of the production suddenly in a fraction of seconds. If at that time I reboot this router, that running configuration will be flushed out and I'll see this router as the host name again. Understood? But here, if you talk about the Palo Alto Firewall, same concept. Same concept. I change something, that commit button is enabled. Now I have two options, whether I can save this configuration in a file or I can commit the configuration. Means I can put that running configuration to the startup configuration. But in between, there is a bit change. That configuration is not going to be the part of production. I'll show you that. We changed that Palo Alto VM test as host name, right? Where is the CLI of this Palo Alto? Here, here it is. I'll log in the firewall. Admin. Admin. You can see here, I changed the host name, but still The host name is showing as Palo Alto VM. It is not showing me Palo Alto VM test. Means we change something and that is not going to reflect, or that is not going to impact the production. Means that candidate configuration is secure. You can change multiple things, still your firewall is running as it is. And now there are two different options, whether you can save that configuration or you can commit the configuration. Commit means just putting running configuration to the startup configuration. Okay, good. Any doubt?
No, sir.
Let's move further. The basic configuration changes, what we can configure here. So we can put the domain here. Like if you configure SSH, then you have to put the device in the domain. Why domain is required? Can you tell me if you have any idea about domain? Why we have to put the devices into domain? This is not part of the firewall. This is the part of the complete infra if you are working in the admin kind of profile. So putting the devices into a domain, in a same domain, for example, you are running an infra and you are having like 100 plus of devices. So at the time it is recommended to put all the devices into a single domain. That is just for the administrative purpose. Okay. So if you are having any domain, you can use that domain here, like for example, cisco.com. Okay. It's up to you. If there is a domain, you can configure that domain here. Let's forget it for now. Login banner, you can set the login banner here. Let me change the login banner. Don't log in the device. I'm just changing the name. It's a login banner only. Login banner is used when you want to show some message to the person who is trying to log in the device. Okay. We use don't log in the device. I'll show you where it will reflect out. Now here is the option for time zone, date and time setting, latitude, longitude. If you want to set this latitude, longitude for the geolocation, it's up to you if you want to configure this. These are the basic settings. This is not necessary. It's up to you if you want to configure this or not. But time zone and date and time should be accurate. Should be accurate. Otherwise, in the monitoring, you are not going to see the exact time frame for the logs. How we can change the time zone? Just click on scroll down button this, or you can directly type if you know the name like Asia, Kolkata, Indian time zone, right? If you want to change the date, you can select the date. It's up to you. It is showing as January 8 and the timing is this. You can change the time. Okay, good. Any confusion, any question about the general setting? Basic things are here.
No, sir, it's good.
Okay, perfect. So let's do the commit here. Click OK. Commit the configuration. Simple. We change the login banner. We'll see where the login banner is actually exists. It will be reflected on the first page. We have to log out for that. Committed successfully. Okay, let me log out this. Here is your login banner. Don't log in the device, right? You can write whatever you want to. So that message will be reflected here in the first page. Let's log back to the device again. So host name, login banner, time zone, you can set directly from the device tab, setup. From the device tab, setup, management, right? Let's move to the other configuration. Management interface configuration is done. Now, authentication setting. We can firstly we'll see this authentication, this minimum password complexity. Have you seen any time like any error kind of things like this much of length, password length is required? If you are changing the password, then it will show you minimum 8 password is minimum 8 words are required. In that 8 words, one uppercase, one lowercase kind of thing is required, right?
Yes, sir.
So here is the option for minimum password complexity. It means like by default there is a one user only, which is admin, right? And the password is already that account is already having a password with admin default, but we can enable this setting, password complexity, and in that we can map the required parameters. Like let's suppose minimum 8 words are required in the password, minimum one uppercase, minimum one lowercase, minimum one numeric is also required, and let's suppose minimum one special character is also required. This is for password format requirement. Now functionality requirement. Now you can change prevent password reuse limit, block password change period days. I think you have seen this kind of issue, errors also, or messages also, like your password is going to expire in 1 day, need to change the password. It is recommended to change the password, right?
Yes, sir.
So here is the expiration warning period. Like if you configure the user, then it will show you the expiration warning. Like your password is going to expire, you need to change the password, and you need to follow this complexity settings. Minimum this much of length is required, and this to this. Okay, it's up to you. Like you can do the lab on that, but now we are just changing. We are just using the complexity. Okay, just click OK, and let me save the configuration.
So we can define the credentials criteria also.
Yes, exactly. This is the credential criteria. Like if you are changing, if you are like configuring a user here on the Palo Alto Firewall, and you have set it up a complexity setting, then you have to follow that complexity setting. I'll show you that how that actually works. So that configuration is committed, right? In the administrator, there is one user by default, admin, with a admin password. Let me configure one more user. How we can create the user in the administrator. By default, admin is there. If you want to configure a different user, like suppose admin, person who is the admin. Let's suppose there is network team, then you have to create the network account for that user. Just click on this add button, administrator add button. Let's suppose I want to configure the user for network. I'm giving the username as network. Name means the username of that account. It's network. Now you can see here that complexity setting reflects here. Minimum 8 character is required, minimum special character 1, uppercase, lowercase, numeric, all the things are here. If my password doesn't match with the criteria, I cannot save the configuration. I cannot create the user. Network 1, 2. I'm using network 1, 2. It is showing me that with a red line below to that column, it is showing something is missing. Let me change the password again. Network N capital, network @1, 2, 3. One uppercase, one lowercase, numeric, special character, 3, 4, 5. NETWORK @1, 2, 3, 4, 5. NETWORK @1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that OK button is enabled, right? If I remove something like here, you can see that OK button is not enabled. Means something is missing. If that password is not matching at the time, I cannot save the password. I cannot create the user. Once I match both the password, OK button is enabled. Click OK, simple. Your user account created for network. Let me know if you have any doubt here. Any doubt in the configuration of the user account or password complexity setting?
No, sir. Good.
Okay, perfect. Let's move further. Again, in the setup, here the authentication setting. Again, in the setup, in the management, authentication setting. So here is the authentication profile. If you configure the authentication profile here, we can map that authentication profile. The idle timeout by default, it's 60 minutes for authenticated user. We can change this. I'll show you how authentication setting actually works. But before that, there is one more option, banners and messages here. Here it is. This is just for the customization. This banner and messages just for the customization. It is showing message of the day banner, right? Let me change the message of the day. Hello to Palo World. There are two different options. First one is the message of the day. The second one is the banners, right? We change message of the day as hello to Palo World, right? In the banner, there are two different options, header and footer, right? Let me configure this, then we'll show you where it is going to reflect here. Header. Uh, this is header. Both are not same. If you click this, it means both are same. So we are not clicking this. Both are different. In our case, this is footer. This is just for the customization. It's up to you whether you want to configure this or not. You can select the color for that. Header text color will be black. Footer color will be yellow. Footer text color will be black. Simple. Configuration part is simple, right?
Yes, sir.
Just click OK. And then again commit. This is basic things like because for the customization. Well, like some like steps are required, the time zone, the time, date and time settings. These should be accurate, but apart from that, all the things are for the customization. Click OK. Let's log out from the Palo Alto Firewall again. Admin. Message of the day, we configure. Hello to the Palo world, right? This is message of the day. Now header footer is also there. So header is showing in the upper side. You can see there is in the red line. We change the color for that. This is header, correct? And footer is there on the lower side, on the bottom of this page. This is footer. Good. Any doubt? Any doubt in this configuration? I think it's basic, right? Apart from that, there is another option, logging and reporting. Just click on the setting of this, logging and reporting. There is some settings, log storage quota. Log storage means the logging in its own memory. You can see here, it is showing the quota. This is the memory of this firewall. We are not using any logging server for now. So log storage is for its own database. Here you can see it is having total around of 15 GB of memory. Unallocated memory is 800 MB and maximum 15.77 GB. And in that, it is going to log the traffic up to this quota, thread up to this quota, right? Alarm, app states, if match. These are for the loggings. These are for the events, basically, you can say, the log events. So the Palo Alto is going to store the events in its own database, which is having a limited memory around 15 GB. If that 15 GB filled out, it is going to override the next logs with the previous one. Okay. You can change it. You can change it as per your requirement, but the recommendation is that you need to use the log export reporting. Means you have to use a server, logging server. Because in the Palo Alto, if you talk about the Palo Alto hardware or virtual environment box, it is having a limited memory. Maybe it is having 16 GB, but let's suppose you are using a server, so that server could have around 500 GB of RAM, oh sorry, ROM. So you can utilize that 500 GB, but in a real production environment, if you talk about where hundreds of users are sitting and trying to access something on a fractions of minutes, they are accessing something. So at that time, the log memory will be required at a higher level, maybe around 10 terabytes, 100 terabytes of data. Sorry, not data. The storage is required to store the data, to store the logs, right? Connecting what I'm saying. If there are multiple logs, if there are 100 plus users are sitting in the company, so the logs will be at a very high rate. So we need a logging server. This log storage is for its own memory. This second, log export and reporting, is for the server. If there is a logging server, we'll do a lab on that also, how that logging server actually works, what configuration is required for that. But we can utilize this option is there. We can utilize a logging server. We can send all the logs from the Palo Alto to that server. We use the server because server is having sufficient memory to store the logs for around 30 days to 6 months. maybe that logging server is having around 100 TB of storage, but that Palo Alto is having around 15 to 16 GB only. So in 15 to 16 GB, we cannot store 1 day of log, but in 100 TB, we can store uh, around 6 months of store logs, right? If in case there is any cyber attack or any kind of malicious thing happens to your infra, at that time you need the logs of, or maybe past 1 month logs required, past 2 months logs required. At that time, that logging server is going to help you out. Understood? Any question?
No, sir, not from my side.
Okay. So log storage, you can manipulate the log storage, log export. We'll do the lab on that, but log storage is there. You can change the logging parameters as per your requirement, as per your needs. By default, these are the parameters, and this is for its own database. Means all the logs will be stored in its own database, Palo Alto's own memory. Okay. Now, let's suppose if we change something. Let me change the name again. Palo Alto test again. Test 01. Test 01. I changed something, right? Click OK. I changed something, and that commit is enabled. Now I said you there are two different options. Whether you can save the configuration or whether you can commit the configuration, right? So before that, like in between of that, there is one more option. Like before committing, when you click on the commit button, there are two options: preview changes, validate changes, or commit, or close. So obviously close, we open the commit to change something. So close is not required. So we can preview the changes. Means Palo Alto gives the authority to check what changes are there. It is going to show you what changes are there from your candidate configuration with the current running, not current startup configuration. Just click on this, preview the changes. Now, this is the running configuration. Here, the startup configuration is known as the running configuration. And it's your candidate configuration, the changes you've done. The legend is this. You can see if you added something, that will be shown to you in the green color. If you modified something, that will be in yellow color. And if you deleted something, that will be in the red color. So we modified something because host name is already set it up, right? We changed the host name only. That's why it is showing in the yellow color. Earlier, the host name was Palo Alto VM test only. Now it is Palo Alto VM test 01. Correct?
Sir, in the candidate configuration can be changed again.
This is the candidate configuration. This is the candidate configuration which is changed. And it is showing you the difference between the running configuration, that current running configuration, and the candidate configuration, so that you can be you can be much sure about what you are going to commit. Good so far?
Yes, sir.
You see what changes you have done, and if you are okay with that, just click the cross button and commit the configuration. Simple, right? But before that, there is option for validate changes. If you want to validate these changes, like you change something and you don't want to save this, you just validate this like all the things are okay. We can change we can commit the configuration by tonight or maybe by tomorrow. So you just validated the configuration. It is showing you some operation validate, session completed, result successful, details configuration is valid. It means there is nothing which is not going to be like giving error. So you validate the configuration. Just click OK. Simple as that. So this is the part before the commit, right? This is the part before the commit. If we change something, if we change something, okay, if we change something and like that is the part of candidate configuration, and you can do multiple things with that. You can check that candidate configuration with respect to the running configuration, or you can validate the changes. Now there is another option where you can save the configuration, right? In the operation, we change the host name as Palo Alto VM test01. In the operation, there is option we can save the configuration. We can save the configuration. Okay. We can save the configuration. How we can? There are two different options. We'll do a lab with the complete lab on this, all this topic. Revert, save, load, export, import, right? But just for like current topic, we are just saving the configuration. So how we can save the configuration? Just click on this save button. Your configuration will be saved, right? Now you have some other options also, like you have changed something multiple times and you want to see the difference between your changes. Like you have changed something, config audit is there. Third option, config audit. Okay, scroll down this. Now it is going to show you the difference between running configuration and in candidate configuration. But there is an option you can change these parameters. Like it is showing you the difference. Now we have committed 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see here, right? At 11:11, at 11:15, at 11:18, 11:21. I can check the difference between any configuration. Any configuration. When I committed the configuration, it creates a snapshot. It created the snapshot and it stored that snapshot in its own memory. I can see the difference between the running configuration and that candidate configuration. Just click this go button, or it is showing you the 5 difference only. You can select it to all. Okay. Just click on this go button. Here you can see. In that running configuration, nothing was there. Are you getting this? It is showing in the red. Means we removed that. In the candidate configuration, nothing is showing here, but in the running configuration, it is showing here, but here it is not available. Means we removed something here in that candidate configuration. If I change it from the last one, this version is identical. Okay, let's compare it with the third one. There is something. Yeah, it is not available, right? Means we configure something. So in the running configuration, it is showing here, but in this candidate config version, It's not here. Means we changed something. We added banner, right? All to follower, hello to follower. This is header, this is footer. We changed this, right? But in that version, in that candidate version, that part is not here. We have not configured this thing in that in at that time when we committed the configuration. Getting my point?
Yes, sir.
We can compare two different versions. We can compare two different time of commit. Like I committed something today and I committed something yesterday. I can check the difference between both the versions, like what changes I have done from from yesterday's to today's. Okay, this is the
Uh,
option for you. Yeah.
Sir, I have one question. Sir, in the router, we have a two type of memory, that is running and the startup. Okay. So, in the case of Palo Alto, we have a running configuration. We have a candidate configuration. So, candidate configuration is similar to the startup configuration.
No, no, no. Candidate configuration is similar to your running configuration of the router.
Okay, but we have a running configuration as well as like.
Yep. Actually, the term is changed here a bit. Term is changed here. If you talk about the startup configuration of a router, startup configuration means then that non-volatile
Yes.
configuration. So here in the Palo Alto, it is known as the running configuration, the non-volatile configuration.
Okay.
If the Palo Alto like reboots at the time, that running configuration is not going to be flushed out, but that that candidate configuration is going to be flushed out at the time. Like your router, if you change something and you have not saved that configuration and your router reboots, at that time that configuration will be flushed out, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So same here, the candidate configuration is the similar to your running configuration of the router. If Palo Alto reboots, at that time candidate configuration will be flushed out, but that running configuration will be there.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
And there is option like in the config audit, you have the option to compare two different versions of commit. You have the option to check the comparison between the running configuration and any version of the commit. You have the options, multiple options are there. Granular options, like you can compare two, like as of now we are comparing with the running configuration to the commit versions. Now we can compare two different commit versions also. Here you can see it will show you, like if the green is there, it means something added. Red is there, it means something deleted, and yellow is there, it means something modified. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Let's back to the setup again. In the services, you have the option to use the DNS. For example, we are using the global DNS. This DNS is basically for the Palo Alto firewall, not for the users. Okay, because sometimes we need the device internet connection also, right? Why that kind of connection is required? So that that device can get the latest update from the server, which is there on the cloud, on the internet. Okay, so sometimes we need the device internet connection, not the user's internet connection. We need that device to be connected with the internet. If you take the example, obviously you have the internet connection, right? But mostly you are using that internet connection for the users. User initiated the request and that request moved to the internet. That is the traditional way. But sometimes this device also requires some internet connection so that they can fetch something from the cloud. maybe the latest software, maybe the latest patch, right? So for that, we need the internet connection from that device, and that request will be initiated from this device, not from the user. So for that, we have to use the DNS, primary DNS and secondary DNS. It's up to us whether we can use, sorry, it's up to us, like we can use the global DNS, or if we do have a local DNS in our infra, we can use that one also. So as of now, I'm putting the IP of the global DNS. Okay. And one more thing is here, update server, updates.paloaltonetworks.com. So that URL should be here, recommended. What is the URL? Updates.paloaltonetworks.com. You can assume this is the cloud service of the Palo Alto. If Palo Alto Firewall wants to fetch any latest software, it is going to hit that URL and will fetch the information directly from that server. Okay, you don't need to do that thing. Just you need to be sure that URL is there and that DNS information is there. Good. And out. We'll talk about all these things, like why this is required in the later classes, why this is required, because this is the part of a separate topic, which is very deeply topic. So we'll talk about all these things, why this update.palo networks required here. Okay. But for now, it should be in your mind, like DNS should be there and that URL should be there. Okay. And you don't need to change that URL unless it is required. Now there is option for NTP. If you are having the NTP server, what is the use of NTP server? Any idea? NTP, network time protocol server. Okay. So basically it provides the timing to your networking devices so that all the devices should be on the same time. Okay. Why? So that all the devices will put the logs with its time frame. And you have to, like, if you are having any NTP server in your company, you can utilize that IP address here. If the secondary NTP server is also there, then you can put the IP address here. And if you don't have the NTP server, there is no requirement for that, no issues. But Palo Alto's own time means that firewall should be with the correct time frame. Means the date should be correct, the time should be correct. And as you can see, currently we are on the wrong time frame. Not enough. In the setup, in the management, general setting, we're showing 11:45. Oh, okay, the time is correct. We changed the time zone. That's why I think they picked the time correctly. Okay. Any doubt till this point? That service, that URL, update server URL, updates.paloaltonetworks.com should be reachable for software and license upgradation. So we don't need to change this. Let me change, let me see you some more customizations. Okay. The setup in the operations is the option for custom logos, right? Before that, let me decrease the resolution of the picture. User one, picture. Let me use this one, open with paint. Move this point out also. This is just for the customization. Okay, you can apply this settings also, but this is just for the customization of the Palo Alto Firewall. So how we can customize this settings? Just click on this. Device setup operations. Here is the custom logo in miscellaneous. Click on this. There are 4 options: login, screen, main, UI, PDF, report, and title. We are just putting the custom logos here for the login screen and main UI. How we can do that? There are 3 options: first, second, third. Third is for to delete this. First is for to upload something. Let's click on the first option, login screen. Move to that picture. We change the resolution of this. I changed the resolution because that resolution should support its requirement. Otherwise, वो उस पे upload ही नहीं होगा. The second one is the panda. We upload it. Okay. Then commit the configuration. Simple as that. Close OK. Log out from this again. You can see now the login screen change. Right? We used 2 photos for different. The first one is the for the login banner, or sorry, login page. The second one is for the main UI, right? So this is the login page where we put it the photo of this. And if I log in, admin, you can see here on the upper left side, the koala is also here. Penguins are on the main screen. Koala is here. Okay. We have to check for the screen resolution, and we have to set that resolution as per our requirement. As of now, only we can see the eyes, right? Understood? Any doubt? This is the concept. Concept should be clear, right? We can change the resolution as per our requirement, but the concept should be in your mind how we can do that. Okay. Let me know if you have any doubt. So we talked about types of firewall already, right? We talked about types of firewall, right? Types of firewall, system firewall, and network firewall. We talked about the user account creation. I think we're done for today. It's okay. Yeah, we're done for today.
Okay, sir.
So any doubt till this point? Like any questions and queries? In today's or yesterday's class?
I will go to Vilas to the next.
Sir,
So-
we can use EVNG also, no, for this lab, for this lab.
Yes, actually, I'll tell you, I'm using Unit Lab, right? Let me close this. So if we talk about my software, I'm using Unit Lab, right? Unit Lab is the older version. Here you can see Unified Networking Lab, right? This is the older version, and you are talking about the EVNG, right? EVNG is the newer version of that Unit Lab. I am used to of this Unit Lab, that's why I'm using this. Otherwise, EVNG is much faster, much reliable. Okay, you should have all the images. You have to like install the images in the EVNG using PNSCP or any kind of file software to transfer the files, and you can utilize that one.
Okay, so right now I'm using that for other routing and switching labs. So I just need to add the Palo Alto images, and then I can start it, right?
Yes, you need to download the images. Maybe you will get that images from those images from Google. So you just need to download that images and need to like transfer images from your system to that EVNG using WinSCP. I saw a video where the user are transferring the like files. If you know the process, you can transfer the files and you can utilize that. I'm using Unit Lab. This is the older version of that EVNG. EVNG is the latest version, and mostly, like most of the like institute are using the EVNG. Apart from that, if you are having enough memory in your system, in your laptop, okay, so you can install uh, like OVS directly on the VMware workstation. Like I'll show you. It's my Here is my workstation. Okay. So here is the Palo Alto image. It is the Palo Alto VM EXI ESX 9.0.4. So if you are having enough RAM, you can utilize Palo Alto directly here. It's up to you.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay, guys, let's wind up the lab for today. We'll meet you next
Sir,
week.
can you share the PDF file to us?
Yeah, I'll share the PDF one by one. Like we covered PDF one, so I'll share that PDF with you, and I'll share the recorded session with you all. Okay, today's recorded session, because yesterday's recorded session, I think Neeraj sir is having that session. Today's session I have in my system, so I'll share that session with you. Or I'll put that session on the drive and we'll share the link to you.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, guys, thank you for joining the session. Let's meet you on the next weekend. Till the time,
Thank
take
you.
care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.